I'm a man on a mission. I'm a man on a mission. I don't need no permission.
Hey, what's up everyone? So right now Warframe is handing out nerfs like it's candy. You get a nerf and you get a nerf. Ember, come out from behind that blunt. It's time for your nerf as well. I don't care if you can't kill anything above level 50. You'll take it and you'll like it. Now sit down, strap in, because this is one long ass video. We've got nerfs to Chroma, nerfs to Ember, and of course maybe nerfs to Banshee, although it didn't look like it might be too much of a nerf after all. So yesterday's dev workshop and impromptu Twitch stream highlighted a lot of changes that we could be seeing in game as early as next week. Among these changes, they showed off Ash with his Bladestorm rework, and of course Atlas, which I've already made a video on, so I won't repeat myself on those two Warframes in this video. Now, the one new thing we learned about Atlas's new rubble mechanic, however, was that his armor buff from picking up that rubble will be a temporary buff and not a scaling one, and that each bit of rubble that you pick up won't refresh that buff's timer. They have their own separate timer, so rubble picked up won't stack or refresh the buff, which in hindsight doesn't actually make that rubble mechanic sound as good as it did originally, with the exception of that heal. Now, at the end of last year, I promised you guys I would be a lot more critical of changes to Warframe, so here we go. Remember that we haven't played any of these nerfs or buffs and only have the workshop post and some footage of actually terribly modded Warframes on that stream to actually go by. Now, first up, let's go over Chroma and his nerf. Now, I'm not exactly sure what's expected of me here. Do you lot expect me to go full potato and rant and rage? Because I got countless messages last night when news broke of Chroma's nerf, demanding me to complain and demanding me to get it reset. Well, here's the thing. Harrow, Oberon, Nova and Saren have been my go-to frames lately. I rarely use Chroma anymore because I could see this nerf coming a mile away as soon as he became the popular frame of choice for hunting Eidolons. Hell, even when I was hunting Eidolons myself on stream, you will have seen me running with Harrow for that instead. And that doesn't mean that I'm happy with the changes that they're bringing to Chroma or even that I like them. They waited way too long to fix Chroma and have cost countless players large amounts of armor. But even with these changes, he doesn't seem like he's going to be too bad. He will still deal a lot of damage with that buff, it just won't be as ridiculously high as it was before. So these are the Chroma changes. We can now run and jump while channeling Spectral Scream, and its damage is now boosted by his Vex Armor's buff. This sounds good and it looked cool on the livestream, it looked really cool, but the simple reality is it is still Spectral Scream. It is Chroma's worst ability, and even with these changes, the damage on that stream looked incredibly bad. Spectral Scream is also an energy draining ability, and if you've modded your Chroma for that Vex buff and Elemental Ward, then the drain on that Spectral Scream is going to be severe. The fact that it looked cool means nothing. You can wrap a dicky bow on a shit, it's still a shit at the end of the day. For as long as I can remember, Chroma users have been asking to be allowed to be able to switch between elements on the fly, like Vauban does with his grenades, or like Cora is going to be able to do with damage types as well, but instead they decided to give us a better Spectral Scream. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Now, they have fixed a long-standing issue, their words, not mine, a long-standing issue with Chroma's Vex Armor calculations, where it calculated its damage buff after mods were equipped, like Serration and so on, which made it deal insane amounts of damage. Now it will calculate before those upgrades are equipped, meaning that the damage boost is going to be a lot lower, but more in line with buffs that other Warframes give us as well, so they're trying to balance that out, which I don't like. But like I said, I could see it coming a mile away as well. It was broken, and I don't think any Chroma user can say that it wasn't. The damage that Chroma could deal because of this Vex Armor buff was absolutely mental. Now, you could still be dealing huge amounts with the new buffs. We'll have to wait and see when we get our hands on it. But what did we actually gain in return for this nerf? For as long as this so-called long-standing issue has been active, players have been allowed to spend time and armor on their Chromas with no chance of ever getting any of that refunded to them, which shouldn't be the case. Digital Extremes, by their own admission, have said that they knew about this broken buff since Chroma's arrival nearly 3 years ago. So whenever they flat out nerf something that they knew was a broken mechanic that they left untouched for an extended period of time, Forma should be refunded. That goes for any frame or any weapon. Why are we constantly having to shift from weapon to weapon or frame to frame? Because they refuse to actually test items before implementing them, or they leave them broken for a long period of time before actually addressing it. Vex Armor will now be a squad aura or a squad wide buff for your teammates to gain the benefits from those damage and armor boosts. This change actually is a really welcome one. It sounds really good, and Chroma can now finally be a squad player instead of the solo Warframe that he has always been up until now. However, with this buff, on the stream it had a 10 meter base range, which isn't much of an aura. When you think about it, that's the same range as your Orthos Prime with Primed Reach, so unless you're joined at the hip to your teammates, then this buff needs to be way higher than what it was showing on the stream if you actually want him to be a buff Warframe. On the live stream, the Chroma they used had about 140% range, which gave him 14 meters on that buff, which is still really bad. If you want to use Chroma as a buff Warframe when these changes hit, then you will need to build for duration, strength and a lot of range, which will leave you with a really fucked up build, which no one will really want. So Chroma users will more than likely still just run solo setups, because sacrificing strength and duration for a really crappy range won't be worth it. All that will have actually changed is that Chroma's damage will be a lot lower, and players will drop him for a different tank or a different damage dealing Warframe. Now, another thing worth mentioning about these Chroma changes is that they have also mentioned that they intend to approach Chroma again at a future date to properly fix him or properly approach his mechanics, which honestly just sounds like they're going to sideline him because they can't be bothered actually trying to fix him. So don't go wasting your Forma on Chroma with these new builds, because chances are he will be fixed again in the future. Also, right now they are keeping their eye on Oberon and how he's been used, so if you enjoy running with Oberon, then be wary of how many Forma you put on him as well. Now, next up we have Ember, and how 5 seconds after casting Ember's World on Fire, her energy drain will double and its range will shrink to half, and her damage will double as well, which sounds like a pretty big nerf considering that she already struggles above level 40. Scott, however, has said that he will look at her number 1 and her number 3 ability early next week and maybe tweak them as well. Now, the damage increase is really nice, but at the cost of range and of that increased energy drain will more than likely make her a lot more vulnerable to getting killed at higher levels, because you're not going to be as effective, especially if you're running with that crowd control setup. This World on Fire change was made because Ember was too effective at killing low level enemies and probably ruined it for a lot of new players. It basically made the game really boring and made them put it down and not want to hang around, which I can fully understand. But for veteran players who may have liked running Ember for her Firequake augment and its crowd control capability, these changes may have just destroyed that augment, because the drain on her energy and the range being shrunken down won't be enough to keep her alive. With this change, they also mentioned that they didn't like the whole set it and forget it approach to Ember's playstyle and her abilities, which honestly is very similar to Octavia's playstyle. Gara's Mass Vitrify will now scale based on the health and shields of enemies that it glasses over as you cast it, which is a very welcome change and looks great in the footage, especially against Infested, because you can group Infested up, but we will need to test it ourselves against Grenier Corpus and Corrupted, who don't swarm you as much and tend to stay at range and behind cover, so you may not get the same kind of scaling on your glass wall as you would against Infested, which means we could be more vulnerable against those enemy types, but we're going to have to wait and see until we actually get our hands on Gara. The damage cap on Volt's discharge has been completely removed, and its base damage has been increased from 750 to 1200, which is absolutely great. However, the damage and the duration will then be halved for enemies further away from your Volt in order to stop you crowd controlling huge areas. This is a change that a lot of Volt users have been asking for a very long time, so hopefully if you're a Volt main, then you will be really happy right now. Now, as mentioned in a previous video, Banshee is also getting a rework as well. Her Resonating Quake augment is now a deployable quake in an area with a very short duration, but it deals a high amount of damage. This doesn't actually look as bad as we first thought it would be. In fact, it was still killing enemies on the stream last night with ease, which seemed to actually surprise Rebecca, so maybe it wasn't working as intended on the stream, or maybe it was. We won't know until we actually get our hands on it and try it out for ourselves. But with these changes, Banshee will be a lot more mobile, but you can no longer go and make yourself a cup of tea in between waves on a defense mission. Now, Zephyrus Changes looked really interesting as well. Tailwind is now combined with Dive Bomb as a single ability, which a lot of us have been asking for. This allows Zephyr to hover in the air and fly in any direction that she wants simply by casting Tailwind in that direction. Then she can cast Dive Bomb by aiming at the ground. This will be a really useful ability in a very small corpus corridor or a Grenier Galleon tile set where you fly up into the air and get your head stuck in the feckin' ceiling. Actually, it's only going to be good out in large open areas or out on the plains or Venus when we eventually get that as well. Now, Zephyr has a new ability called Airburst, which is a projectile that ragdolls enemies it hits and can be fired into tornadoes to make them bigger as well. So one of the things players hated about Zephyr was the tornado ragdoll. Now she comes with additional ragdoll, so be happy. Zephyr's tornadoes will now spawn where you're aiming, and you can steer the nearest tornado to you simply by aiming your reticle where you want it to go. They apparently trap enemies better, and shooting the tornado will damage enemies inside. So as a Zephyr player, you can now drive a tornado. Absolutely brilliant. Again, we'll have to wait and see exactly how Zephyr plays out with these changes, but she will hopefully be a lot more fun for us to run with. Now, Mag got a bit of a buff. Crazy, right? Not a nerf for Mag. Mag shards from Polarize will now scale with power strength as well as a percentage of the damage done to enemies that it has hit, which will allow her to kill a lot more effectively. And her crush will now replenish shields to her and her teammates depending on the damage that it has dealt, which is also really nice. So that's basically the changes. I have a video on Ash and Atlas from a few days ago if you want to go and check those out. And before I end this video, let's just talk about something else with regards some of these Warframe ability nerfs and changes. Like Ember's World on Fire and Banshee's Quake and Chroma's Vex Armor, I'd like to say one thing. These were all done to address issues of players farming too effectively or farming too quickly or promoting a boring playstyle in order to get that farming done as quickly as possible. I know it wasn't enjoyable, but farming or grinding isn't enjoyable either, and these were the frames that we used to make it a lot, I guess, faster for us and a lot more bearable, which is a weird statement considering they synergized Hydroid around his bloody puddle and they said they don't like to promote a boring playstyle. Fucking what? These changes have been made because players were farming focus or leveling items too fast or killing Eidolons too quickly by wiping out missions like Hydron or Akkad or wherever your favourite hunting spot was. But the reality is that these nerfs will change absolutely nothing. Players will just migrate to the next Warframe who can do that farming as effectively now with these nerfs, and farm just as quickly. Spore Saren can wipe out everything on Hydron just as quickly as a Banshee could, maim Equinox as well. Octavia or Volt with his shields down can melt an Eidolon's limbs just as fast as a Vex Chroma could. So if I was an Octavia main right now, then I would be a little bit weary because she's insanely powerful and is the next best thing to Chroma for Eidolon killing, but she can also set it and let it on Hydron and kill everything, which is the reason that they changed Ember's World on Fire, because they said they didn't like to promote that playstyle. The real issue isn't these Warframes themselves, it's the actual game or the grind in Warframe. It always has been, it's always been too much, and it's always made us try to do it as quickly as possible. Like the bullshit focus system, or the ridiculous armor scaling, or the increased grind while out on the plains, and of course the constant introduction of new resources that keep getting added to the game, which means we need to go and farm those as well. Players will always find the most effective way of lessening that grind, but instead of addressing all of those issues, the developers continue to stick band-aids on it by nerfing our Warframes and our weapons. And when Octavia, Saren and Volt become more popular, does that mean that we can expect a band-aid on them as well, or a nerf on them as well? How can you honestly expect your players to enjoy your game when they know that somewhere down the line their favourite Warframe or their favourite weapon will get a nerf or an unwanted change, and all of the time and all of the form that they have put into those items is completely a waste of time? Can you continue to call it balancing when major issues get flat out ignored? I don't think you can, but it's okay, they'll release a new weapon and a new Warframe to take everyone's attention away from it very soon. Sleight of hand at its best, it's something that they've been always very good at. Now, let me know in the comment section below what you think of all of these nerfs and of course all of these changes. Are these frames the actual problem, or is it the grind? Is it the focus? What do you think? Chroma honestly isn't as bad as it looks, but if they can increase his range, then he will be in a pretty good support position, I guess, as a pretty good support Warframe that can still deal a really nice amount of damage with his weapons. Do me a huge favour and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, or don't if you didn't. Subscribe for more Warframe, and as always, thanks very much.